You're a Marine as well. Served our country and the community as a police officer. What key values are missing, and or maybe causing this polarization?
Golly, that's a very large onion to peel, right? What key values? I don't think policing has changed all that much in 200 years. When I would instruct or tell police officers, I would always tell them, remember the course that you're going through. It's not the police officer's course. It's not even officer's course. It's called the peace officer's course. And what I would try to tell these young men and women is that remember what that means. You are bringing the peace. That's usually through the way of using your intellect, your verbal skills and whatnot. It might come in the way of a use of force, but really, truly, we are bringing the peace. I also think there's a misunderstanding from the general public of what it is that we do. I remember there was a famous article, or an article that I really liked. He had done a lecture, and he had talked about police authority and what authority police had. This lecture was not in high school, it was not at a college. It was actually done at people who are getting their master's degree. These are people who had already had their degrees and they were getting a master's degree. He said that after he was done with his lecture about police authority and what police can do in a given situation, he had a line of people coming up and asking and talking about police authority, and they had no idea that police had the authority to do X. And I think that in the general public, there's a misunderstanding. I cannot tell you how many times in 20 years in the streets of San Antonio that people in a given day or week would come over during a police interaction and say, hey, you can't do that. Hey, you can't do that. And technically, yes, we can. It's just they don't understand our authority or what we're there to do. So there's a big, huge misunderstanding and a huge gap in that. I also say this, right? All this misinformation or I guess narrative that's being pushed out. I tell this story. This happened not more than maybe 4 years ago. About 4 years ago, I got into a situation where I almost had to shoot somebody, almost had to take another human life. I did some time in the Marine Corps, and then, of course, having been in the police department for a long period of time, working some of the worst parts of San Antonio, this is the closest I'd come to shooting somebody. I'm telling some friends of mine who are maybe a little bit more left-leaning about this story. And I got emotional during telling it because, I didn't want to kill anybody. Anyway, long story short, at the end of the story, my friend's wife says, if only most police officers thought the way you did. And that hit me very hard. Here's a very well-educated woman who actually thinks that most police officers are out there thinking that they want to harm somebody or, God forbid, shoot somebody. So there's obviously a messaging problem that goes along with policing and what we do, how we get our job done, and what our end result is or what we want the end result to be. So believe me, there's a large onion to peel.
George, quick question or get your point of view. It seems like a lot of the discourse that has happened regarding defund the police, regarding a lot of the protesting and things that are going on, seems like it followed the last election. And in a lot of those cases, very left-leaning district attorneys were elected. And prior to that, it again, dealing with law enforcement, having known you for a little bit, it seems like law enforcement and district attorneys were always worked together. And it seems like now they're at opposition in many high population areas. And that seems like that's getting a lot of attention by the media, driving the discourse. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I would say, I want to be careful here. I still do have a lot of friends and some family in law enforcement in this area. And of course, I live here. So I will say that the district attorney's job is to, of course, prosecute criminals. And we have to bring those cases to them. I would say that in an area where crime has risen here in San Antonio, I think that it would do people good to look at what your district attorney is prosecuting and what they're letting go by the wayside. I want to be very, very careful here. I don't want to get too political, but I would say that I don't disagree with the narrative that in this last wave of elections, it has gone far to the left when it comes to district attorneys and their prosecution of certain criminals. Just because someone's caught doing a nonviolent crime does not mean that individual solely commits that crime. I think it's a big misnomer in the public that when somebody just gets convicted of theft or a nonviolent crime, that's all they commit. So when you're letting someone go or giving somebody a lighter sentence because you think it's a nonviolent crime, that's the same individual that can commit that nonviolent crime. I mean, commit that violent crime the very next day. So yes, to your point, Ken, as best as I can say, because I do want to be careful here, is I would say that you have seen a rise in district attorneys not wanting to prosecute nonviolent offenses. You see it in the decriminalization of certain drug uses. You see it in them in raising the amount of property crime where they really don't prosecute anything less than $750. Now, this affects everybody, not just small businesses, but the individual. And I think that's a big, big mistake when you hear about it nationally. And now we're seeing it even in my own beloved city, where we're having the district attorney's office raise that limit, where they're really not going after the criminal. And that's a dangerous, dangerous road to go down. And man, I really think somebody should cease and desist that kind of action in the district attorney's office. Best I can say. Hope I answered your question there.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate that. Your expertise in this area and having served on the front line is extremely important. And I know living in Texas, as I also have a property in Texas, that the majority of the state is densely populated with people that own weapons, that are law-abiding citizens. Yet there are certain cities, one specifically I'm thinking of, where they have gone way to the left, and they're experiencing an increase in crime, an increase in all types of related issues that is moving in a different way from the state as a total. Can you comment on that at all?
Are you speaking about my brothers up a little bit north of us, maybe an hour from here, right? So yeah, no, listen, I'm a gun owner. I didn't grow up in a household with a gun. My father, we had 4 boys and a girl. We just didn't have a weapon in the house. I own 5 weapons, 1 rifle. I think gun ownership, responsible gun ownership, I think is a must. I'll tell you, and I pivoted since then, right? Growing up, I didn't see the purpose for a gun. Now, right, 30 years later, as old as I am, I think that every household probably should at least know to have a weapon or use a weapon. I think that people have a misunderstanding of what the gun is for. Yes, it's for hunting, it's for sportsmanship and what have you. But I can tell you, having been a police officer in a big city, if it happens, the worst situation you could ever think of, which is, in my opinion, someone breaking into your home, and you don't have the means to defend yourself, we are not seconds away. We are several minutes away. So to anyone who ever hears this or understands what I'm saying is, we're there to take the report afterwards. And that's my best opinion on gun ownership, responsible gun ownership, is that I don't own a weapon so I can look cool or so I can go and try to look away. I own a weapon to protect my family. And I know, being a police officer for 20 years here in the city of San Antonio, that if you were to call any of my brothers and sisters, they're not seconds away, they're minutes away. So I would say being a responsible gun owner is very, very important. I would say that defending your right to carry a weapon is very, very important. And I think it also comes down from a misunderstanding of, I've heard it said before, people think there's a very simplistic way to handle gun control. And there really isn't. Anybody who says that, I think that is not paying attention. I mean, just to give you a quick stat here, in the city of San Antonio, right, I don't like it when people speak on huge statistic they know nothing about. This is in my own city. From 2017 to 2021, there were over right at 15,000 firearms taken off the street just in the incorporated city of San Antonio. 2017 to 2021, 15,000 weapons taken off the street. I mean, think about that just in the city of San Antonio. So you're talking about a very broad issue where weapons are everywhere, and now we want to pass legislation to take the guns out of law-abiding citizens. I say this all the time. The bad guy doesn't care about what law you make. He doesn't care how many you make. He doesn't care if you post a sign. He is going to do what he does. So to create any other laws that take guns out of responsible gun owners' hands, I personally, my opinion, I don't agree with it.
Well, thank you, George. I consider you a brother, and in the majority of what you and I try to do for the public. And thank you for your service. Thank you for what you've done for everybody.
Yeah, George,
my
you brought
pleasure.
up you brought up some great points, and talk about a polarizing subject when it comes to gun ownership and gun control. I think one of the points that you brought up is something not a lot of people think about, but the police are usually called when or as or after a crime has been committed. So,
yes.
That's one thing. One thing that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about when they're thinking about gun ownership and gun regulations is that you're going to be on your own for a little bit. And if there's the police, they're there to help, but we're calling them for help, and they have to get to us first. So thanks for bringing that up, and I appreciate your perspective and your insight. Thanks for taking the time with us, to come on the show. We're going to have you back on definitely for our next episode, which is going to cover immigration and border control. Since you're so close to the border in San Antonio, we know you have some experience with that. So we're looking forward to talking with you next episode as well. Thanks, George.
Great.
Thank you, George.
Thanks, guys. See you later, Ken. Bye, guys.
Well, Ken, I think we learned a lot.
It's amazing when you get a lot of learned people that have actual experience giving you the information they see. I don't hear a lot of this on the normal information channels, and I think it's important that we address the facts, not the scenario. I
think you're 100% right. Well, thanks, Ken. Thanks for coming on. Thanks again for your time. We've learned a lot today. I hope we can keep open dialogues about this. I think that's, the best path towards combating polarization, everything that we've been talking about. So we're going to have you back on next week as well. We're going to talk about immigration.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks for watching. Join us next week when we talk about immigration on America's Frontline.